Hello, welcome to another episode at Move It or Lose It. And today I'm very excited to have a guest on that I know personally because he's one of my clients as well. So today I am very excited to have Ricky with me on the show today because he's had MS for a long time and also has a mother with MS, had a mother with MS. And so we're going to talk about some of those things and what it was like back then to have multiple sclerosis. So with no further ado, Ricky Bytel, I'm very excited to have you. Welcome to Move It or Lose It.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you. So Ricky, I was obviously, as we trained together, and yes, I've known more and more, we get to talk about some of our stories together. And I've just been so intrigued with your story because I think it represents a generation that some of our newly diagnosed patients can't really relate to. And so I'd like you to share with me, if you would mind, what was life like before diagnosis for you?
Well, MS for me started when I was 12 years old, because in 1979, my mother was diagnosed with MS. So that was my first exposure to MS. And back then, there were no treatments or anything like that. All they did was give her steroids. So she went downhill very quickly. Within 6 months, she was in a wheelchair. She couldn't drive any longer. Her mental facilities were not good. I had to take over all the bills. At 15, the checking account, it was in my name. I paid all of the bills for the house. My father, who 6 months after my mom was diagnosed, left us, and so was now paying alimony and child support, used to give me the check every month so I could pay all the bills because my mom just wasn't capable and
Right.
They didn't trust anybody else to do it.
Sure, absolutely. So that had to be a ginormous responsibility for, I'm trying to think of my boys at 15 and would they be able to do that? And so
it was a strange time because although I had a lot of responsibility, it also gave me a lot of freedom.
Sure.
Because I didn't have a parent at home. I would stay out till 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Once I got my driver's license at 16, I was gone all the time. Sure. I made sure mom was taken care of. We had to have somebody live in the house to take care of her. So I didn't need to actually physically be there to take care of her. But I was, independent. I did what I wanted to.
Right. Absolutely. Hold on one second. A battery will change this. Okay. Realized my husband's phone was in here. He'd be pretty stressed in about 2 minutes. So go ahead and continue. We'll have him edit this out.
So, and so my childhood, all my teenage years, although I had the freedom and did what I wanted, was responsible, I really hated it. I was miserable. Yeah. And
watching your mom
to go away to college.
Where did you end up going to college?
Huh?
Where did you end up going to college, Ricky?
I went to UCSD. And I wanted to major in electrical engineering and computer science. And after 2 years of college, they told me, well, I had straight A's in all my computer classes and all my electrical engineering classes, but I didn't do great in my other classes, the English and history and all. I mean, I got B's and C's, but they weren't A's. And because it was so competitive in school, they said, no, you cannot be an EECS major. There's too many people, so you have to change your major. I'm like, what am I going to change my major to? They said, we can be a math major. I'm like, what do you do with a math major? Teach? I said, I don't want to teach. So I quit going to UCSD and went to a technical trade school. Okay. Called Coleman College in San Diego. and literally studied computers and fixing computers and got down with that. And after 9 months of that, I graduated valedictorian of my class and got a job working computers within 2 weeks. And after 6 months was miserable.
Really?
The people I was working with, I didn't like. The job that they had me doing, I was fixing computers, but it was just boring, repetitive work over and over and over again. And I didn't like it. And my father, who I was complaining to, says, well, come work for me. And my brother was already working for my father. And my father had his own business that he started in 1969,
Okay.
a DMV registration service. And I went to work for him in 1988. And within a year, I was running the business. My father pretty much retired. He still came to the office every day, but I took all the calls. I did all the business. I took care of everything. 2 years after that, my father actually retired, moved to Las Vegas, and my brother and myself ran the business. And then in 2003, we had a bad year, and my dad said, okay, everybody, we're all going to have to take pay cuts because we can't afford to pay ourselves like we do. Except I'm not going to cut my pay because I need my money. And I said, what? I said, we all need our money, Dad. He's like, yeah, but I need it more. I'm like, well, no. So I quit.
Okay.
And started my own business.
Oh, you did? Okay.
And so in let's see, that was 2003. So like 2012, 2013, I started my own business and ran my own business successfully until MS forced me to retire in 2020. I just couldn't
This damn
keep up.
disease will do it, won't it?
Yeah, I would just kick your butt every time.
Now, when you started your own business, I'm just curious, did your brother come along with you?
No, my
Okay.
brother stayed. And because I did the exact same business that my father did. And I told my dad when I left, I said, I will not take any of your customers. I won't go after any of the clients that we have. I said, I have my couple of clients.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily for me, I pretty much had 2 clients. But they were huge companies on the East Coast that had huge fleets out here in California. So these 2 customers kept me so busy. It was more than I could deal with. I mean, I had money coming out of my ears because I was just working so hard, getting as much work done as I could.
Right. That's pretty awesome that you were able to do that and do it successfully.
Excuse me.
Sure. So what I want to know now, Ricky, is for your own life, as far as physically and things like that, what were some of the things that you were doing prior to MS? So what are some of the things you enjoyed?
Oh, I used to snow ski and water ski, and we would go camping and hiking, and I played tennis in high school and water polo in high school. And I was always a chubby kid.
That's hard for me to believe. You're so thin.
Even as an adult. And it actually got worse as an adult because I got up to about 275 pounds.
Okay.
But I was always active. I still bowled. Up until my diagnosis, I bowled 3 or 4 days a week and still would play tennis with my friends, and we would play softball and stuff like that. But within a year of my diagnosis, I no longer could pretty much do any of the sports that required any coordination.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was still walking around and I could still, function my day-to-day work, but I just couldn't do anything with coordination. Like I couldn't bowl or swing a tennis racket because I just didn't have the coordination any longer.
So how devastating that must have been to go from being active and being able to do things that you wanted to do to all of a sudden nothing working right, no
Absolutely.
coordination. So one of the things I find interesting is that you skipped over relapsing remitting. You were an overachiever. So tell our viewers where you went to right away.
Yeah, well, I was diagnosed in 1995. My right arm went numb. And after a lumbar puncture and an MRI, they diagnosed me with MS, and I was devastated because I only could relate it to what happened, what I saw with my mom. And I didn't really know a whole lot about MS. I mean, I knew enough about MS to know what I was talking about, but I didn't know all the ins and outs of MS. And I thought I was going to end up like my mom, and come to realize that, MS is different for everybody else. And I still led a pretty much normal life. I mean, I met my wife a year before I was diagnosed. We got engaged, we married. 7 years later, she decided she couldn't deal with having to take care of somebody that was going to need caretaking. So she left.
How did you deal with that, Ricky? How was that for you?
That was tough because it was a friendly thing. We're still friends now and talk occasionally and stuff like that. But she was the one love of my life. And I haven't been with anybody since. Yeah. And it what really hurt is she had a very large family. She had 7 brothers and sisters. And so I would go to their house for Christmas and there would be 50 people there. And this was all my family for many years, because like I said, we started dating in 95 and we divorced in 2007. So I knew these people for 10 or 12 years. So these were my family, and all of a sudden it was gone.
Right. And it's a big loss.
But you deal, you move on, and you go through life, and I had my MS to worry about, and I had my business to run, and so I had to keep doing what I was doing.
Yeah. And she, if I remember correctly, she had a son or a child, right? Am I correct?
Well, yeah, she had, first of all, when we met, I was at a DMV registration service, and she worked at the DMV. So we met over the counter at the DMV. And I knew she was a little bit older than me, and she knew I was a little bit younger than her. So when I asked her out, we went out on a couple of dates. And it wasn't until about 3 weeks that we realized that she was 17 and a half years older than me.
So what'd you think of that?
I had no problems with it at all. And at the time, she didn't have any problems with it at all. But she had a daughter who was 3 years younger than me, and a son who was 6 years younger than me. And right after we got married, her son and his girlfriend had a baby, and the courts, because her son had drug problems, the courts took the baby away and actually gave the baby to us. So we got the chance to raise a newborn, and that was something that was the one thing that I regretted about not getting married, is I didn't have a chance to raise a baby.
Sure.
But now I had that chance, and and I those memories are just wonderful to me.
I'm sure. What a gift.
Yeah. And it's funny, they still call me Grandpa Ricky when they see me every
I
once in a
love
while,
that.
even though they're 17 and 18 years old now. Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
So tell our listeners, because a lot of our newly diagnosed don't really understand what it was like back then. And we talked a little bit before we started about when I was first diagnosed, and pretty much a little bit, maybe 2 or 3 years after you. And I was told, no more children, absolutely not.
Right.
And back then it was ridiculous to even think of that. That was something that it was just not, no, absolutely no. So explain to our listeners that now are having children and feel safe doing it, and the neurologist will work with them.
Right.
So explain how different it was back then. It was not something that we did.
Well, back then, when I was diagnosed, I decided that I wasn't going to have children because I didn't want to take the chance that my children would have to go through seeing me. Not that I was worried about them getting MS, but having to deal with me being disabled like I had to deal with my mom.
Sure.
Now, and also the fact that I didn't want them to have MS, because they say, although this never made sense to me, they say MS is not hereditary, but it runs in families. I'm like, isn't that what hereditary means? But that's what they say. They said it's, if your parent has it, you're 4 or 5 times more likely to get MS than the normal person. And I didn't want to take that chance. And luckily for me, it just happened to be that my wife, who was considerably older than I was, already had her children and didn't want to have any more children. So that was never an issue for us.
Right.
We never had to think about whether or not to have kids or not, because she already had her kids. And I got the one rare opportunity to raise the baby. So
yes.
I was happy about that.
And now, Ricky, the percentage of that from like a mom to a son has gone down incrementally. I think it's less than 1%.
Wow.
So, I mean, the fact that you had that, my son has it.
Yeah.
And I didn't worry about that as much as I worried about my daughter getting it. And she
Right.
shows no signs of it. And so it was very petrifying to me and unexpected when my son at 19 started showing signs of
Right.
optic neuritis. So I'm with you in the hereditary, and they'll say things like there's a gene, and I'm like, you guys don't know anymore than you did 20 years ago. So it is frustrating because I can see my grandfather had it all on the same side.
Right.
My aunt had it, I have it, and my son has it. And all of us have almost the exact same, we've had the exact same symptoms. The eye, the left side of our body,
right.
Just the same things. And so I find it to be remarkable that this has not been put together yet, that they still don't understand it. So I'm with you. I do believe that it is in the family, and I do believe it can be hereditary. I am excited about the opportunities that we're seeing more, especially since COVID, and all the neurologists from all over the world got together, and testing for children earlier is being done. So that gives me hope that we're able to at least see that, where years ago there was nothing. It was just wait and hopefully not.
When my mom was diagnosed, there literally was no treatments. When I was diagnosed, I was given 2 choices, Avonex or Beta-Seron. And I chose Avonex because it was only 1 shot a week instead of Beta-Seron, which is every other day.
Right.
Like, well, that's too many shots a week. I'd rather do the Avonex, which is
that's what I did.
And
till you realize how much ibuprofen you need in a time, and that it was like, what?
and that's the other thing that for me is odd, is that I know people have terrible side effects from lots of the MS medicines. Not one of the MS medicines I took ever gave me any side effects. I never had cold-like symptoms, flu-like symptoms, fevers, headaches, tired. My symptoms of MS are, I have no balance. My right side is very weak, to the point where I literally can't move my right leg. lift my right leg at all.
No, Ricky, that's not true. We've been lifting it. It's been
Well,
lifting.
Well, but it's
I'm going to
getting
stop
better.
you there. You've been increasing your mobility.
Yes.
You've been lifting it.
Yes. But like I said, I don't have typical MS symptoms. I don't have fatigue. I'm not tired all the time. You know, I go to bed at midnight, between 11:30 and midnight, and I wake up between 8 o'clock every morning. So I get 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. I don't nap during the day. I don't feel tired during the day. I don't drag or anything like that.
Right.
But my right side, like I said, it's just constantly annoying, and the spasticity in my right side literally drives me up the wall most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I definitely see that with you. And I know how hard you work to strengthen it. And I always appreciate your willingness and how hard you work at it. So let's talk about some of the things that you're experiencing since COVID. So you had to stop driving in 2019. And what prompted that? What made that happen?
I had a car accident.
Okay.
And I just decided that my reflexes weren't up to me driving anymore, and this was the safest thing to do. With the cars nowadays, I actually think maybe I could drive, because my brother's car, it's got the, you know, it won't let you tailgate too close,
right,
within the lane, all that kind of stuff. And I said, I could probably handle that kind of stuff. At the time, that wasn't available.
Right.
So I quit driving, and my mobility is basically, I have a scooter that I ride around the neighborhood. It's got a 15-mile range. I've never taken it more than about 5 or 6 miles. But and so I go to the local grocery store with my scooter, and whatever I can fit into my basket, into one bag between my legs, is what I go grocery shopping for.
Now, did you take the dog with you?
When Najee was a service dog, he used to go with me, but at that time I was driving. I've had him 12 years now, so he was a service dog for the first 8, and he's been retired the last 4. And he's 14 now, so he's good for about 50 or 100 yards, and then he's done. So he's too old to go for long walks anymore.
I remember when my golden retriever got to that age, and I tried to run with her back then, and she'd be like, "No, I'm too old for this."
Yeah.
So for our listeners, I want to go back to the dog again, because we're seeing more and more of that. And we're, for me, you and I talk about this a lot, because I have my crazy puppy who's needs to go into training. And now that she's a year old, things are so different now. They have to be a year, they have to be spayed or neutered. And so explain how that works and how that makes you feel to have that.
Well, a friend of mine had a son who was autistic, and they got a service dog for him through Canine Companions of Independence. And they told me, they said, "Ricky, you should apply." I said, "What's a service dog going to do for me?" He's like, "Well, you should apply and find out." So I applied and find out, and it worked out. And they said it's a 18 to 24 month process. And 6 months later, they called me up and said, "Okay, we're having a service dog class, and if you want to come, you're invited." And I said, "Great." And I spent 2 weeks in Oceanside at CCI at their corporate offices, and literally learning how to. The dogs are already trained; they know what to do. I'm learning how to control them and to maintain them, and to be the pack leader, because that's what dogs are looking for. They're looking for a leader, and if you do the right things, your dog will follow you. And he was great. I mean, I would. In my earlier years, I was in network marketing, and I would go to conventions all over the United States, and he would fly with me on the airplanes, and he would sit on the floor at the convention for 8 hours while people were lecturing and stuff like that. And having a service dog was great.
Yeah. For
Plus,
sure.
it really brings you out because although when they're working, they're not supposed to be petted by people because that distracts them. And when they're working, they're working. But people don't really understand.
No,
That.
they
So
don't.
they and I wasn't using Najee to his fullest. I didn't need a very attentive service dog because I was still going around myself pretty well. So people would come up and they would ask, and I would say yes, and we would talk about it, and I would let them pet him and stuff like that. But it really brought me out of my shell because I'm pretty much a loner most of the time. So he was really good for me.
Yeah, I'm sure. Now, Ricky, is that by choice, or do you think the MS really have you always been like that, or did the MS kind of pull you away from a lot?
The MS kind of pulled me away. I was a little like that before, but the MS just intensified it. It just made it much more strong because I feel like, I can't do anything. I know it's a bad thing to say, but I said, I can't go anywhere or do anything. I have to have my electric wheelchair or my scooter if I'm walking any distances. So it's just life with MS.
Right. Well, I want to encourage you by saying that every time we're going to do a session, I am delighted to be with you and I enjoy our conversations. And I think that you are a great conversationalist. And I love your personality. I love teasing you because cognitively you're spot on. So I love calling out the wrong number and you correct me. And so I think that as difficult as it can be to get out there, especially when you've got the wheelchair and you've got all of the issues that you've got, I think that sometimes we're surprised when we go do something and realize that there are people that are there that would want to, take us out and enjoy our company. And we sometimes get in our head that why would anyone want to be around us? We're a pain in the ass. We've got all this stuff, all this equipment. And so I would encourage you, not that you've asked for my input, but I would encourage you to try to get out there a little bit because I know that your brother comes and helps and stuff. And I just think that your personality is great and you have a lot to offer. And you're still a young man. You're not 80 and you still have a lot to offer. And I hate the idea of you sheltering yourself and not being able to get out there.
And knock on wood, I do have my brother.
Yes.
Because without him, honestly, I believe I would be dead now. Because my brother, I live in his home. He picks me up when I fall. Now it's not that often, but it does happen. But he literally has to take care of me. He does all the cooking, all the kitchen cleanup. We have a housekeeper that comes to the house once every 2 weeks to do the major cleaning, but he's responsible for everything and he takes care of everything and all the driving and all the places. And he's got a 30-year-old son and a 17-year-old son of his own that he's got to deal with.
Right.
So my brother has just been a godsend to me, and I really appreciate him for that.
And I love that you said that because I do believe, and we've talked about this before, caregivers just don't get enough support and enough said about them. It's, they're in the disease with us. And I know the stuff that my husband does for me. I could never express enough my appreciation and just how much I couldn't imagine trying to do this on my own. Yeah. And I do believe that one of my podcasts that I'm going to be doing soon is about caregivers and about the relationship between them and the patient. And really the caregivers, how do they allow themselves to breathe? How do they allow themselves to vent out when they're angry and they're, frustrated with the disease? Right. And I think sometimes it feels like there's no place for them to vent.
Right.
Because what are they going to do? Talk to us about it,
Right.
yell at us and tell us how much they hate it. So I think it's, there needs to be more spaces for that.
And I made a commitment to my brother. I said, when he took me in, when I lost my house because my wife and I were divorced and I was working, but I couldn't afford my house anymore. And he took me in. I said, I will not become between you and your kids. I will not invite myself to your events. If you guys want to invite me to go somewhere, that's fine. But if you don't invite me, I'm not going to invite myself. I'm not going to put myself in there. Your family is your family, and I respect that. So when they invite me to go to things and I want to go, I go. You know, his younger son is a singer and an actor, and he performs, and it's just amazing to see. And when they invite me, I go. And when they don't invite me, I don't feel bad. Well, you know,
Yeah.
They have their things that they do together, and that's fun.
And that's one of the things I love about you too, Ricky, is you're so easygoing. I can say, you know, do you want to do this exercise? You're like, sure. And I know that that's not something you're looking forward to, but I think that that's another thing with you, even how easygoing you are with your brother. You don't take things so personally. You don't get wrapped up in the small stuff. And I think that that is really what's kept you strong and emotionally able to fight this, is that you don't take everything to be, I never see you in the victim role. You don't play the victim role.
Thank you.
And I think that that's very commendable. And I think I don't think I see it a lot where where our autoimmune world can't get out of that spot. And when we're in that victim spot, we never grow. We never become somewhat victorious of this. We're never able to get our bodies moving because we're in that victim card.
And a lot of the Facebook groups and stuff like that, that's all that's all they talk about. And I'm like, I don't understand.
Ricky, I don't think either one of us will understand this generation right now. I don't think we can quite understand some of the stuff that we see on social media. And, you know, with my job, I'm on it all the time. And some of the things I see that from the crazy to the people taking advantage of us. And I just had a scam happen to me today. And at first I was really excited. I was going to train these for teenagers. I love teenagers, and realized back in the day in Craigslist when that used to happen, and they would scam you. Long story short, caught it. But you know, it's that disappointment, because I thought, oh, this will be great for you know, for my finances and for what I'm doing. And it's very frustrating that there's so many people out there on social media, especially now, that really prey upon people with our autoimmune diseases. And it's quite sickening. And I don't see any of that changing. And we've talked about it before, that I will get, you know, someone that wants to be on the podcast, and I'm trying desperately to understand what it is that they do. And besides, you know, pictures of themselves on Instagram. And so that could be very frustrating. And I think, I hope and pray that at some point that these people are called out and that some of this ends, because it is quite ridiculous. So, but now I want to go into talking about how many DMTs have you been on?
All the old ones, the crabs, Copaxone, Rebif, Avonex, Betaseron, Tecfidera,
Tisabri.
Tisabri. I was actually in the clinical trial for Tisabri, which was actually Tisabri and Avonex together.
Really?
Yeah, I was in the clinical trial for that for 2 years. And then after the clinical trial was over, they let me continue to take the medicine for 2 more years. And then I tested JC positive, and you can't be on Tisabri any longer.
No.
Because they're afraid of that
PML.
Pulmonary multifocal
Wow.
encephalopathy.
I've never heard anyone try to say that. When they ask me, I'm like, look it up. It's a very long Latin word, so look it up.
So, and then I was on Lemtrada,
Mhm.
and I did Lemtrada, which was a once a year infusion. And I did that the first year, and then I did it again the second year.
Mhm.
And then I think I went to Ocrevus.
Okay. Because that's what we're both on now.
And then I went to Ocrevus. And like I said, they always told me that the medicines aren't supposed to make you feel any better. They're just to stop you from getting worse. I'm like, okay, well, they're not making me feel any better, and I'm still getting worse. So the medicines, I don't know whether they've done anything or not. I knock on wood that they have, because the insurance companies have spent thousands and thousands of dollars on this medications. And honestly, I couldn't tell you if they made a different one way or the other.
Right. Right.
My MRIs are stable.
Right.
But even that, they say is kind of not a really true statement, because most MRIs aren't powerful enough to see minor changes that may be going on. And those MRIs are really, really expensive.
Yes.
So most MRIs that people go to are the less powerful ones, and they show stable activity. But like I said, I'm slowly on the downhill. I don't have any flares,
Right.
but I definitely feel myself getting less better.
Yeah, I find it interesting when I have my MRI read to me, and it's constantly like excited, like no new hotspots.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, but things are definitely changing. And I think it's really just kind of a shove off to not acknowledge that in the gray matter, there's still stuff happening back there.
Yeah.
And obviously we know that now, because our bodies still progress with the MS no matter what. And so it leaves us like, what's happening? And I remember back when Tysabri came out and thinking that this was the wonder drug that was gonna, and it did great for me. I was able to be on it all the way up until right before COVID.
Yeah.
So on Ocrevus, I know we've talked about that a lot. I'm not doing great on it. I don't feel, and I fortunately can compare it to my last medication, because I did very well on it.
Right.
And so now going on to Ocrevus, I see the decline in my body, in the fatigue, which, like you, I never had that before.
Right.
I would often look at patients, and back in my early days, I think just because of my cheerfulness, and I would get put with the newly diagnosed patients just to kind of encourage them that this doesn't define who you are. It's not the person you are. And I led a very normal life for many years with Tysabri until I couldn't do it anymore. And I definitely feel a big difference with Ocrevus. And so do you think, I know you haven't felt a lot of any changes with the different medications. Do you feel that some of the decline that you're having could possibly be Ocrevus, or you just don't know?
I just don't know.
Yeah.
Like I said, none of the medicines at all ever made anything better or any worse.
Right.
I know in my men's group, some of the guys talk about on the Ocrevus, because Ocrevus is every 6 months, and they said 5 months into it, they start to feel bad again. And they have this 1 month gap where they don't feel bad. And then they get their infusion and they feel better again. And I'm like, I never had that. I get the infusion, I sit there. I take all the pre-drugs they give you, because some of the guys say they don't like taking the Benadryl,
right?
They don't like taking the steroids. I'm like, I don't care. Give me whatever you do. And I don't feel any different one way or the other.
Yeah, very interesting. So did you ever think about HSCT? Was that ever in your things that you thought about?
I thought about it, but it was just too expensive. I never could afford
Right.
something like that. And the thought of, I mean, at the time, back when I was still more mobile, when I think it might have done something, and it would mean having to go to like Costa Rica or something like that for the treatment. And it was just money I didn't have.
Right.
So that was nothing that that I ever seriously considered.
Right. Understandable.
And from the people I've talked to, about 75% says, it really didn't do anything. Some people said it helped a little bit. Some people said it stopped the progression. But,
Now,
you
is
know,
this mostly Ricky and the men's group that they share about the
Yeah.
ones that have, okay. Yeah, because I would say I'm with you. I heard a lot of that in the earlier years. And I would say the last few years, I've had a lot more success stories with our other MSers
Mhm.
who have had great success with it. So it does have me curious. I am asking more questions, looking into it.
Yeah.
The cost is still terrifying. But I am curious. I have heard wonderful things about the hospital in both in Mexico. I don't think I'd feel safe going to Russia right now. But I do think that I am interested. I've heard great things about, if we're talking 15 years ago, would I have gone to Mexico to do my treatment? No,
Right.
but I wouldn't have done what your mom did and how she had to go to Mexico because there wasn't anything there and get bee sting therapy. What in the world?
When I was married, my wife had family in TJ, and I went and saw all kinds of doctors down there, and they gave me all kinds of herbs and pills, and I don't know if they didn't do anything. They didn't make me feel any better. I never felt any improvement in anything.
So you go to sleep at the same time, you sleep well. So anything that you need to help your body sleep, or do you just go to bed on your own?
I take a sleeping pill.
Okay. And what do you take for sleep?
It's called Remeron.
Okay.
It's actually an antidepressant.
Okay.
But my doctor says, if it helps you sleep, we'll keep. I've been taking it, and I've been taking it for years.
Okay.
If it's not bad, and it doesn't make me loopy or anything like that.
Right.
I just know I take it about 30 to 40 minutes later, I'll fall asleep.
Right.
So I take it every day about 11:30, and I'm usually asleep by midnight.
Now, do you use any cannabis?
Yes. I do. It definitely makes the spasticity a little less.
Mm-hmm.
But it also makes me stiff in some. So I don't use it as much as as some people do. But I do know that it improves my mood. So if I'm ever just not feeling very happy that day, I just know I can, take a little hit, and it just makes me feel better,
Yeah, for sure.
And, I'm not driving anywhere or going anywhere. So
yes.
I don't worry about it too much.
Yeah. No, I think there was such a big judgment on that for so many years.
Yeah.
And I know for me, before I started to use cannabis, I think I stared at the pen for probably a week before I knew what to do with it, because it was just not in my life. I'd never used cannabis. So I just stared at it and watched it, thinking maybe it would just do something on its own, and just kidding. I obviously knew that it wouldn't. But I didn't know where to start, with all of this. And there were so many voices and saying, you do this. And at the time here in Michigan, you go to the store and my husband would be like, you were in your yoga pants, you went where? And I'd be like, yeah, I did. And I wanted to do it myself. I want to learn more.
Yeah.
And I would say, 5 years later, I learned quite a bit.
Right.
And I'm kind of in a regimen that works for me for nighttime and something I can take during the day if the spasticity is just overwhelming. So it is definitely, I would say, a help. Now, I always tell patients or clients that are getting CBD at like CVS or some store, like, no,
Yeah.
like you can't do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And if you're just doing, CBD, well, then buy a gallon because that's what you're going to need to feel any different.
Right.
So I do believe that there is room for cannabis. And I
Yeah.
know that we're learning more and more each day.
And it's so funny because my brother has been getting high since he was 14. But I was always so against smoking.
Right.
I mean, because my parents smoked and eventually they both quit. But I was just so against smoking that I could never do it. And so I was in my 30s. It was 1998 or 1999. So I was 30 or 31 and I was having problems sleeping. My brother says, "You gotta try this, Erky." And I said, okay. And I tried it. And not only did I sleep well, the next day I felt so much better.
Yeah.
From my MS.
Yes.
I'm like, look, I can jump. And I was jumping up and down. And I'm like, what's going on? But that didn't last very long.
Yeah.
But that's how I got into cannabis at first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I see a big difference now with my sleep and the sleeping pills that I was on in the early days that were so addictive that I was like, what am I doing? How is this better for me?
Right.
In the Ambien days when they gave you like 20 milligrams.
And I took Ambien. I mean, I literally almost killed myself on Ambien because one Ambien wouldn't work, so I tried two didn't work, so I tried four.
Oh, geez, Ricky.
4 didn't work, so I tried 6.
Wow.
My brother said, "Ricky, you can't do this."
No.
I'm like, yeah, it's not working. So, but yeah,
wow.
I didn't do well.
No.
And I don't know what it is. I just don't get side effects from medicine.
That's so strange.
I can't explain it. I can't tell you why.
Right. And the neurologists aren't helping with that either.
No.
So when we talked about, do you think that where we're at now in 2022, and are we closer to finding a cure? Your personal opinion is what?
I don't believe they're looking for a cure because there's no money in a cure. There's money in treating symptoms. And I believe that there are researchers that are looking for cures, but the big money is researching treatments to treat symptoms.
Yes, I agree. And it's frustrating. It's very frustrating to think sometimes you can trust. And my search for a neurologist went on for quite a while. And it was the same, pushed around and getting just more different medications to stop this. And I came home with 10 more medications I was on to begin with. And so I'm like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to take all this. So get rid of this stuff. And now, back to the drawing board, back to looking for a neurologist again.
Yep.
So it is a very frustrating, and I agree. It's what a lot of us with MS go through and other autoimmune diseases it's learning to have to sometimes break up with your neurologist and end it. And then the exhaustion of finding another. And I don't think people really understand how frustrating that is for us to have to look for another neurologist and go through all that we go through to connect with that neurologist. And no, we don't need them to be our best friends. No. We don't need to go out for pizza with them. We're not even allowed to have pizza. So, but the point is that they need to be hearing us and listening. And most of the time I find they don't. And so that's a very frustrating thing. So how is your relationship with your neurologist at the time?
It's very casual. I had one neurologist for the first probably 15, 20 years. And then he retired. And I've had two other neurologists since then. I go see them. They ask me how I'm doing. I said, I'm doing okay.
Yeah.
He says, do you want to do any changes here or there? I inquired about a baclofen pump, which I have an appointment to meet with the neurosurgeon that does that, the end of this month. But none of them suggested anything to me.
Yeah.
The walkers, the scooter, I went out myself and bought them.
Yeah.
If I needed a prescription, I had to ask them, give me a prescription for a scooter. And I said, okay.
Yeah.
But they never brought anything up or mentioned anything or said this was available or anything like that. I don't understand this disease, how you get this disease and they give you a bunch of flyers and say, okay, take what you want to do.
And Ricky, we talked about this and it's so frustrating to me because I just went through this with my husband and he had to see a cardiologist. And I'm like, no other disease, no other ist. The cardiologist gives you pamphlets and says, what do you think? I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what I have. I'm looking to you as my neurologist to help me with this. And so I do believe that it's one of the rare things with us and neurologists that they don't really understand the disease as much as we hope they do. And so in that, there isn't a lot of, I think I told you this before, I got a cane on my own, like you said, that you have to do everything on your own. And I didn't know how to use it. I never had a cane. And when I picked it up at the hospital, I said, could someone show me? They looked at me like I had four heads. I was like, okay, I guess I'll YouTube it. And so I literally had to do that. And I thought, this is crazy that this is how we live, that this is a spot that we have to teach ourselves so many things with all the other things, cognitive stuff. And there's no one that really helps with that stuff.
Yeah.
And so it is frustrating. I think I see more programs like my support group that I'm doing. I am doing it with just women. And I'm finding more, it's through the Multiple Sclerosis Foundation.
Right.
And I am seeing a lot of hopeful things in that aspect, in the sense that there are a lot more programs, a lot more things that are free to us that they're able to get. So that feels, it feels good to be able to say to them, here's the email, here's the woman to speak with, and they will then send you the stuff. And the things that we need that we would not have received back in the day. And so that feels really good that we can do things like that. So as far as before we end, what are some of the things that make you the most hopeful as far as patients' voices and things in the groups and just things that you see that happened after COVID?
Well, it's just that everybody seems to be hopeful and not depressed about their disease.
Mm-hmm.
In my men's group, it's kind of funny. There's a couple of guys who are just Debbie Downers all the time, and there's a couple of guys that are just always up. But most of the people are just riding the waves, riding the ups and downs, and everybody's getting along.
Yeah, I've had the honor of being in your men's group and teaching some of the exercise moves and talking, just about what it's like, and really wanting to listen to what it is like to be a man with MS. And do you feel like you're heard as much as women with MS?
Yeah.
And so I've really appreciated being able to slide into the men's group and be a part of that. And so my last question, Ricky, is I want you to talk about, because this is something that I've heard over and over again now. Talk to me about the transportation. So you've got the wheelchair, you've got your stuff, you're about to get into the van, they're supposed to get you to your appointment, and they're right on time?
Well, what was funny is, this all started right when COVID hit. So right when COVID hit, when I had doctor's appointments, I would call them up. They give you they say, what time do you need to be there? I need to be there at 11. They said, okay, we'll pick you up between 10 and 10:30. And at 10 o'clock, they were there.
Uh-huh.
And it was dependable. But since now that they've gotten busier and people are getting back to life, it seems like my ride, okay, I got to be there at 11. They say, okay, we'll be there between 9 and 9:30. And I say, okay. And then they show up at 10:45. And my appointment's at 11. And they still got 3 other people to drop off before they drop me off. So it's just been very frustrating that, you know, you can't call them until they're a half hour late. And then they tell you, okay, well, we'll be there in the next 45 minutes. So you got to just sit there and wait for them.
Right.
Luckily,
and then listen to one of my podcasts while you're waiting.
well, I've listened to most of I've listened to like the first, I'm up to like 42
That's
of
good.
your podcasts. Because I have lots of time. I'm sitting around riding my scooter around.
Are you rating them?
Huh?
Are you rating
No.
them? What? So that is a really big problem. And I'm hearing more and more of this, and then missing the doctor's appointments, because by the time you get there, now they can't see you.
Yeah, that happened. That's happened to me twice.
Yeah.
Once I had to go to my urologist for something, and I was supposed to be there at 11. They didn't get there to me till 11:25. He said, I'm on call at 11:30. I gotta go, so we gotta reschedule his appointment. So then I gotta wait now because they just dropped me off at 11, and I gotta be at the office an hour before they'll pick me up again. So I have an hour there to kill, and then they gotta pick me up, and then I gotta drive around with everybody else,
Right.
where everyone else is going.
And everybody's probably in a great mood by then.
The only good thing about the whole thing is, and it's really why I don't complain, is because I can go anywhere in Orange County for $3.60.
Yeah, that is amazing.
I can't go into LA County, but anywhere in Orange County with OC access, I can go, and it's $3.60 each way.
Yeah, that you can't beat that. You can't Uber that. You
No.
can't Uber a block for that. So that is great. Unfortunately, with the lack of help and all the things that we're facing now, it's something that I'm glad that you talked about, because we've talked about it. And it's something that I'm going to be doing more in the podcast and talking
Right.
about this more, because California is definitely having a bigger issue than a lot of the other states, but it has become something that's not just bothersome, but something that is a big, big problem for us and for all of our handicapped people. And so it's just, so I'm grateful that you brought that up.
You know what? You just learn to be patient.
Yeah.
You know, when you get a chronic illness, you just learn you have to be patient.
Ricky, I'm Italian, so that has not come to me yet.
You have to be, otherwise you're going to drive
Yes.
yourself crazy.
You are right. You are right. Absolutely. And I appreciate you, and I appreciate your personality and how open you are, and just being able to work with you. I know that you've rated me the best trainer in the world, and I appreciate that. So, but I do enjoy working with you very much.
I enjoy the class too. It's better than the physical therapy I was doing before, because it more focuses on the movements I'm actually doing, although they were all right. But it's just difficult because, you know, working with the cameras and trying to get everything set up, and
Yeah.
I can't stand up and
Right.
move over and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
It's
And you
just-
do a really good job with that too. I mean, you don't get overly, caught up in, this won't move right.
Yeah.
And I mean, you do a really good job at, maneuvering the camera and getting it set. And I would say that's the trickiest part, And especially for my clients are like you that are in scooters that are bound like that, having to move the cameras.
Yeah.
Some of the other clients that have some more mobility, it's not as difficult, but for you to maneuver the cameras, I think it's just, again, speaks to your personality and understanding that if I can't see you, if I can't see from, your foot up and what you're doing, that I can't charge you. I personally can't look at you and say, that was great, when I can't see you.
Right.
And so that's always been very important to me, much more as I'm training my autoimmune clients, because I have to see everything you're doing so that I know that you're doing it right, so that I can see your leg lift when you say it's not lifting. So I can see, what you're doing. And so it's incredibly important, much more than me just sending a video to you guys and saying, here, do your best. And for me to be able to watch what you're doing. Yeah. So I appreciate us working together. I appreciate all that you're willing to do. And Ricky, it's been a joy to interview you, and I knew it would be. And so I'm going to do my best to get this transportation stuff taken care of, darn it. I'm going to work on it. So I just want to thank you. And Ricky, Bytel, you've been a great interview, and I can't wait to have you back. Can't wait to train you again. And so thank you again, and I will see you soon. And thank you again, viewers. Another episode of Move It or Lose It. Hope you guys have a great day. Can't wait to see you guys again next week. Enjoy your day today.